Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the April. Let me see, it is April, right? Yeah, April.
Mhm.
Uh, Too sexy for April. Fairly new meetup group here. This is really only our fourth actual meetup. One of them got canceled a couple of months ago, and then lo and behold, we were doing the first Friday of every month, and it didn't even dawn on me until this week that this month's meetup is right on Good Friday. So if you're joining us after the fact, welcome on YouTube there, and kind of excited. I think we're starting to settle in a little bit to a format, and you'll see it kind of evolve over the time. But we kind of have three different formats so far for the meetups. One of which is like we'll do today was more of a presentation kind of format where somebody comes on and shares something cool that they've been working on or something that could bring value to somebody else. Nothing super formal or anything like that. Still very open ended and all that, but it'll be a little bit more presentation focused. And then I think next month we'll do more of a workshop type thing where we will pick something that we want to try to do within the realm of Too Sexy, and we'll kind of all do it together. I mean, you could be working on your machine, we'll be working on ours, somebody will be sharing, and we'll kind of collaborate and kind of see. Now, Daniel, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you and I have been talking a little bit about next month. And if you're still open for it, I know we got a lot going on during the time, but it's at the beginning of the month. So it should be before DNN Connect there. We're going to try to actually compile and work with, you know, Too Sexy at a core standpoint
It's a
and try
good
our
way
best
to
to do.
not put me on the spot there.
Yeah. I said I wasn't going to, but I kind of did, didn't I? But we'll do it together. I mean, we were talking about, well, it may not go well, and that's okay because, I mean, we're going to try and see if Daniel Metler can join us for that and kind of guide us through that. But sometimes when you're using open source, you don't want to fully rely, on the progress or lack thereof of a particular environment. Now, that's not usually the case with Two Sexy because they're incredibly active and we all are just scrambling to keep up with the progress with it. But there are situations where you may want to do something completely custom and kind of fork off of it, or in the unlikely event that the proverbial buses run over the whole Too Sexy team, then we would at least know how to build it and keep it going in the future. So be a fun experiment to see. And then the third format is more of a kind of a round table type environment, show and tell type thing. So little quick snippets. Hey, I've been doing this cool little thing. So kind of like little mini presentations, but way less formal. So hope you can join us. It's exciting to see the group grow a little bit here. Let me share my screen here real quick. Because I should have been doing that all along when I was talking about it, but here we go. Oh, and then you see Daniel there. Yeah, so if you are not aware of it's on the meetup site. So out on meetup.com, and then it's too sexy -4 DNN and octane. And if you do not know about DNN or octane, DNN's on the .NET framework stack, been a little over 20 years now in existence, open source, popular content management system or application framework, as a lot of people might would leverage that. Whereas Too Sexy is more of the content management system that sits on top of it. But Too Sexy will run both on DNN and Octane. Octane is a fairly new project. I mean, it's been going on for a little while now, and it's actually started by Sean Walker, who actually was the original creator of DNN and founder of DNN. So it's an exciting project, but it's on .NET Core or Blazor as it's kind of stacked there. But Too Sexy will work on both of them, so it's kind of cool how that works out. But check us out, look out for future events. Now, for today, there's a little bit of community buzz, and I don't know. I think John Corneliuson said that he had an announcement for everybody or something, didn't you, John?
Where is that on mute? No, 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 no. I did not have an announcement. I'm excited to hear. I thought there was some new release of Too Sexy, perhaps, or something exciting, but I'm just here to
I'm
learn.
sure. I'm sure we'll find some excitement here in a few minutes. I don't know of a big announcement or anything, but we definitely, there's always a new release of Too Sexy, it seems. So we'll go over that in a minute. And for those of you who may be new to Too Sexy, go check out toosexy.org, and lots of cool resources out there to kind of help you get started with Too Sexy and understand a little bit more about it. So let's look and see what has been happening since the last time we met. Let's see, last time we met, the most recent release was this one on February the 20th, version 15.3. And I think there was a call really for people to help test and so forth. I know a lot of you have probably been doing so and providing feedback out there. And so things went a little bit silent because I was thinking, oh, okay, there's going to be an LTS soon. Yeah, be able to kind of feel confident on the production sites to try to use this. So things went a little bit quiet for a while, but over the last 2 weeks, there's been quite a bit that's happening. So 2 weeks ago, 15.4 was released as a very big release, and there's a lot of cool notes here. I personally have not played with this particular version yet, so I don't know if anybody has and would like to highlight anything that they have seen. Not to put you on the spot, Jeremy, Jeremy, but
yeah, no, I've played with the formula stuff, but I haven't really learned anything new other than the new way to edit them and use the interface now.
Was it you that was talking about kind of finding where the new formulas?
Yeah, when after he updated this, he didn't update the docs. So I was kind of surprised that it took me a couple days and a couple of gears turning in my head to go, oh, wait a minute, maybe it's over here now. And I found it.
Ah, okay. And I think I saw in a little bit later release that the docs have been updated. So hopefully that has been placed in the docs. I haven't checked myself, but I guess the cool thing about this is now that you have IntelliSense within formulas and have a little bit more power there. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically the IntelliSense, it's in a better place, and you can sit there and write your JS code and test and see the results as you go. The IntelliSense is amazing though, because it picks up on your content type and shows you your fields and properties. It's really nice.
That is cool. Now I know they had a lot of work going on with the data sources API, and it sounds like they've kind of reached a milestone there of that, because they were planning on doing that before the LTS stamp gets put on it or whatever. But I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know they were kind of re-architecting a lot of that stuff in there. And then I saw something very cool. Maybe it was in a later version. I'm going to scroll up. So shortly after the release of 15.4, there was a 15.5 that had a few minor bug fixes and enhancements in it. And then last week, there was 15.6 with some minor enhancements and bug fixes. Looks like just one PR on that one. And then 3 days ago, there was 15.7.
Oh, geez.
And, so I told you, John, there's some cool stuff happening, man. I don't know if it's a big announcement, but one of them was big, right? It's a very big release, anyways. This one here, was it this one that I saw something? Oh yeah. This one kind of caught my eye. The where you can place a C# file in there, but now it supports constructor dependency injection, so that's kind of cool. To kind of do something like that, kind of simplify your kind of scaffolding out of a lot of that stuff, and being able to easily pull in other dependencies within DNN or T6C, I'm assuming. That would be kind of cool. And then just yesterday, there's 15.8.
May I mention that I had just finished installing 1507 on 4 sites, and this popped up not 30 minutes later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's like
that's my life.
Yeah.
Oh, God damn.
So my guess is, a lot of this stuff is, except for the very big release, is a lot of just final prep work to get it to a point where they're comfortable with putting the LTS stamp on it. I think historically this is what has happened. It's been like a push for a few weeks to try to get it finalized, for that kind of stamp to be put onto it on there. And then I saw here too, Jeremy, I didn't look at this PR in detail, but there's some docs updates here. So maybe you got your docs wish there for the formulas.
May 4th is coming,
Yeah, that's usually his big release.
Yeah.
That is actually true, Steve. So I think we could probably expect to see that LTS happen during that. That's my gut feel as they announce all these major cool new stuff that's going to be in here. So that's great.
I'm just curious. There was a release a few before where it talked about the immutability that he introduced. Does anyone know exactly what that means in a practical sense?
Yeah, it means he changed the data so it stays read-only like it should be. In the old ones, you could go get the object in memory to read the properties and stuff, and you could change them, and that's not supposed to happen.
So it's basically preventing you from doing something bad, sort of.
Pretty much. I don't think you could do anything bad. I just think it was confusing that you seemed like you could change the data in memory and then it wouldn't change.
It wouldn't persist.
Into sexy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So now it's mutable and read-only-ish or something like that.
Well, now I know.
I just caught this too. There's evidently a new WYSIWYG mode or modes here. That'll be interesting to see. So create a new rich mode in future, which does things very differently. Stay tuned. Okay. All right. Well,
but that has to do with that thing he partially demoed last time. Remember he was demoing
that's true. Yeah.
In WYSIWYG separations.
Yes, that's probably what he's referring to here, or part of it anyways. That's exciting. It's always it shouldn't be surprising to me, but it's usually a little bit jarring, to come out here and see what all's been happening over the last few weeks and to see all of this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we have so much to catch up on. But
reading the tea leaves.
Yeah, but as is common, this has just been the history of it. They're trying to go. I think he told us a few meetups ago that they try to stay on a cadence of 2 major releases a year. That's pretty impressive. That keeps things moving along. But the good news is that I haven't seen, even though there's been major new features and things like that, ever since, let's see, version 11 range, the upgradability of the apps, the custom apps we made has just been pretty painless. Really that jump from 11, I think it was 11 to 12, where they changed is dynamic to is list or something like that. As dynamic to as list. And that wasn't really a big change once you realized what needed to happen. It was pretty easy to update all the apps, but I like to see that. So unless you're into the weeds or the minutia of core features, that you probably are going to be pretty safe to upgrade things. So kind of nice to see that stability in there. So I think I'm gonna stop sharing now as soon as I introduce, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Is it João?
Yes, that's fine.
Kinda. You need to be Portuguese to be able to say that.
João.
Yeah, very much.
Well, that was my Americanized version. Wow. How do you
don't
say
have the
it?
necessary genes to pronounce that name.
Thanks for that, David.
John.
Thank you, John. Oh, John, yes. Is that kind of a parallel or a coordinating that? Like I know, like Jose in Spanish would be more like a John. Is that is there that comparison?
Yeah, I could say so.
No, they are actually two different names.
No?
We have both here.
I don't know any Portuguese John myself.
Daniel, you're from Portugal originally too, right?
Yes, and I think João's from Brazil.
No, Portugal.
Portugal?
Portugal,
Okay.
yeah. So I'll turn it over to him. He's going to share some things that he's been working on recently. And on that, I really appreciate you being willing to share some cool things. Again, no pressure here. This is a pretty relaxed group here. So
Sure.
I feel free to take it as you want to go through this. And do you want us to kind of ask any questions as we go along, or kind of leave it to the end? I mean, I don't know. What
I'm going to show small bits of 3 different projects, so perhaps it's best to ask questions while we talk about it, or else in the end we're going to go around and around and not so easy. Do you mind if I share them?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Can you see the window fine?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. As it's written in my profile, I am not a programmer or developer or anything like it. I'm a nurse, a clinical nurse, work in a hospital. So this is, it started sort of like a hobby, but then it developed into research projects, and being able to build forms and analyze data has been what I've been working. And lately with my PhD project, even worse. So one of the concerns that we have in clinical practice is insert data, protect the data. Sometimes we need to encrypt some sort of data. So I've been showing some features that allow us to do that. One of them, as we've been talking till now, is formulas, which allowed a great many things for my projects. I don't know if you use the old formulas, but you usually just went to the entity type, then to the fields, and you could configure it right here in formulas. This is the version 1 of the formulas. Now, if you try to open it, it will tell you, do not use this. Go into the, in fact, it doesn't tell you great many things here, but ask support in the GitHub, and then I'll explain where exactly it is. I believe documentation is still underway, but I managed to reach there. You now have to open the form itself and access what it was called the debug menu, and now it's supposed to be called developer menu. So Control-Shift-Alt, click, and you have the formulas right here. And it was...
What was that shortcut that you...
It's Control-Shift-Alt, click inside the form.
Control-Shift-Alt, click, okay.
It's access to the developer menu. And then you have this formula menu at the bottom. And you can now see the entity type, all the data types, and the ones that are bold are the ones that have some sort of formula inside it. You can see I have one here, which changes the value. You can change a lot many things. I use, for example, nodes, I use drop-down values. I'm gonna show one at a time. This little code here, it does a hashing on a client code. So my researchers just select one of the clients. This is all fictional data, so don't worry about recording. And instead of recording the name, I set this field as ephemeral. It means that it will not be saved anywhere. It's an ephemeral field. And instead of that, it creates a hidden field down here, which will perform with a version 1 code. It's not yet a version 2. I didn't have the time to update it. I know it doesn't work directly. Some things like the update, I believe. I know there's some line here that does not work in version 2. So I can convert it directly. But it's a simple hashing algorithm that allows to save not the name of the client, but some sort of hashing or protected data. And Formulas has been a great way to deal with this. So every time you change the value, it will update with a hashing version. I don't know if you ever use ephemeral fields, but it basically, it's this little thing here, and you go and access in the settings. It's here. Don't save the value, it's ephemeral. It usually doesn't have that much utility. If you don't want to save it, why do you want it in the form? But it's useful to create other forms or other inputs inside the same form. And it has been very, very valuable to me. So that way, if you try to access the data, you will see that the username is empty. There's no user here, but there is a hashed version of the code for the user. It has some commas because it's one hashing for each of the users selected. It's a multiple field setting. And other possible uses for these formulas, it's filter drop-down values. You can see that if I try to open this, it has nothing, but as soon as I select one of the options here, these options will be filled. This is performed by a simple query to the API. I don't know if anyone has used this yet, but it's a great way. Yeah. It basically is calling an API call, each one of these, and it returns with the data I want. It can be a dictionary, a list, wherever you need, but it fills this data with these values, the same for this one. If you want to filter what is shown inside a drop-down, you can use the formula. I can show you exactly what that is. It's inspect, and it's the drop-down values. You can perform another version 1 formula, which will call the API the same way. You use it inside the view. You can send any parameters you want. In this case, that intervention is this field up here, and another parameter. And you will then fill these fields here. I used one of the documented formulas from Too Sexy. So it's there, and you can just copy and it works on the spot. You can also see here, let me just close this. This is a simple heading, but since this form is to use by clinical researchers, it needs to be updated with a procedure. And the user needs to read the procedure. So let me just close developer mode. And you can see that it's filling this heading notes right here. And if I change anything, it will update. It's very easy to set up, and you can guide someone to fill a form based on what you select in a drop-down, in a text field, or whatever you want. And the same way, it will respond with HTML code in this case, and you can fill the note itself. Just go to the procedure. It's the notes in this case. And again, it's a simple example from Too Sexy documentation. It's very easy to follow. And sometimes you can guide wherever users you have to give them simple information inside the form itself that updates as needed, whenever needed, and can be updated as many times as needed. So this has been very, very, very useful. Another useful features, for example, filling automatically data, filling automatically time. In this case, it gets the time and date when the form is open, but you can program it to wherever you want. If you can do basic JavaScript, you will be able to do this, no problem. In this case, it's the value from date, for example. You can just place any code you want and it will update the value when the form opens or when some other field changes. So this can be used to fill values, fill dropdowns, fill nodes, fill the field itself. And I believe it has been a great addition since Formulas version 1. I believe Formulas version 2 are much, much improved. If you use Formulas, do not use version 15.05. This was bugged, and they were turning 5.05 on the controller. But 15.06 fixed this, so it has actually been some important updates, and Daniel fixed this quite as soon as possible. Don't know if anyone has any questions I can answer, or I can move into the next feature.
This is a really cool use cases for some of this stuff. I'm not sure that we've ran into this complex of a need. Usually we're just using basic, hide and show fields based on certain views and things like that. But this is really, really cool what you've done here.
This is literally really apps built for very, very, very specific use cases. This is a research project when researcher opens the field, selects something that needs to be protected. So if someone steals the database or copies it, they won't have at least a direct access to data that needs protection. It will select some fields. You can open this, but it can also be changed to wherever you need it. And they can be guided to what they need to do, to what they need to access. Instead of opening multiple windows to check procedures, complex text, it will be shown here in the same spot for every time they need it. So it helped me a lot in these later versions. And I believe it can be built to help many other use cases. Just that's specific, so it needs to be built for every use case.
João, would you be willing to show the API code real quick?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Would you be willing to show the API, the backend code real quick?
Sure.
I assume you're calling your own API stuff? Yeah, exactly. So you kept them very simple. That's nice.
This is as basic as it can get. This one shows the procedure, the HTML text that fills the nodes of that heading. And this just returns the values for the dropdown. You can see two parameters. What I showed that was being sent is the intervention name and a group 1 or 2. So it's basically filtering an entity type that I had here. Intervention name and a group. So from these interventions and these specifications, where is it? Specifications. It's basically selecting some of these based on the data that is being sent. It just checks if there's only one match for a possible intervention and it loads the fields into the form. So it's very, very easy, very, very simple. Not much to say about it.
Nice. Really nice.
So is there anything holding you back from going to the second version of the formulas? Just time to convert or what?
Yes, just time. I tried to do a director version. It automatically output at least 2 errors. So some things change, obviously. Daniel still hasn't released the documentation. At least when I asked him, I don't know if it is out yet. When it's out, I'll try to update to version 2 since it seems to have a lot of new features. So good. I will see what I can use.
Great.
So another thing that I would like to show you is this little bottom bar here. I don't know how this works in your countries, but when we use research practice in healthcare, there's some issues with data protection. And when we submit a project, there is some restrictions and users need to be aware of exactly how this data is being used, and cookies are, well, a nightmare. We use usually cookies indiscriminately, let's face it. We all use data analytics, Google, and things like that. And we don't actually say to people what we are going to use with this data. Usually there's only one button, accept, and that's it. Either accept or go use some other website, but that's not allowed. So I had to use I tried at least some third-party module, but they all had some sort of issues. Most of them was not multi-language, and that's automatically a no-go for me. You can say here that this thing automatically converts because this is not a DNN module. This is a TooSexy app running here and loading. It's a shame Aaron is not here because I use his guide to automatically implement this module in the theme in this bottom section here. So he has a blog post, I believe he talked about it, and I just copied his code and it worked. And every page in this site is loaded with this. It shows a button, but it also loads everything else into the code. What does it do? It basically, the most important part is tell people what cookies are used, how they are used, and ask for an explicit allow. And this is mandatory right here, so no way to run away. If it's mandatory, showing Portuguese. I believe I saved, so let me click this. Necessary cookies obviously cannot be disabled, or yes, DNN will not work. There's no way to run most sites on the web without basic cookies, so they cannot be disabled. But when you reach performance cookies like analytics and other stuff, the user has the right to disable them on the spot and say, I don't want this, but I still want to use your website, so I only need your demand or mandatory cookies. And this leads to other problems. How can we disable this when it's configured in the DNN to run? And I reached a few options. One of them is using the native Google tag. It won't run here since it's not the original page. It's here. I created an option for each of the cookies that allows you to run any JavaScript code you want in order to enable or to disable. And Google Tag Manager has a feature to only run if a cookie within your website is present. Or if you want, you can take away the code from DNN to enable Google Tag Manager from the website itself into here, and it will run if it's enabled. So this is one of the options. I created one data type for cookie types, simple text that can be translated in the user interface. The same for cookie items. You just give them the cookie type, a description, a name, and you can create a code in order to enable or to disable it. For each of the types, you can set if it's unnecessary and how the tool will work. You can allow it to be checked by default, disabled by default, or checked and disabled since it's a mandatory data and it cannot be disabled. So you can't actually tell users they're disabling cookies and then you're just enabling the same way. This only works with these two data types and no complex stuff here. And it can be customized in some features at least. It has two working modes, either show a bottom bar where users can select, accept, reject, or just give them the modal as soon as it opens the site. I can show you here, let me just disable this. And in the first access, it will be shown the modal where it has to automatically either accept or reject the cookies. It can't do anything else until it accepts the cookies. So it's basically another very specific use case, since DNN still hasn't a very developed cookie settings options. It has too many options for users and it's too selective in use cases. And this is another use case app created deliberately for this. I believe I never shared this, but I'll probably just create a Git2 project for sharing this. And users can contribute with whatever they want. And as probably every other cookie consent model, it uses by creating cookies. It tells if the user accepts the cookies, which cookies accepted, which ones they rejected. And it's basically this. We can't say users don't want cookies without creating cookies, which is kind of a nonsense, but it's the only way to do this, at least. We need to store information on the user computer in order to see what he wants to do or not. In terms of code, it's also very simple. I'll share it in GitHub as soon as I have the time. But it's just a simple model, and it loads the code, the JavaScript code, with a very nasty and variable option, which is HTML raw, which can create problems if users want to inject some JavaScript, which we do not want, but there's no other option to do this, at least not until now. Does anyone have any question about this? Translation is placed in resources, so anyone can translate this into whatever languages. The buttons, the text, the descriptions. This is the app translatable settings. And the other ones are inside data types.
Yeah, it looks really smooth. I've been seeing similar code on other sites, but to have something that's open source and freely available would be super helpful. So thanks.
Yes, eventually, I don't know if DNN would want to go this specific way, giving more options to users, or just keep the simple bar and load the page to cookie info. But this is one of the options that could be implemented into DNN itself, including some customization settings. I showed here it's the way the cookie consent works, but it also can customize the some icons, some cookies. You can customize which buttons to show on the bar, and which, in this case, bootstrap classes are implemented. If you want to change the bar to light and the buttons to dark, you can change right here, and it will reload the changes on the spot. So I'll try to place this on the project on GitHub, and if anyone wants to contribute, they will be welcome wherever contributions it may be. And I believe I already talked too much, so I have another projects I can show, but don't know if I have the time. David, what do you think?
Oh yeah, you definitely have time. I was wondering. I mean, first of all, this is just really fantastic. I'm impressed with that. That would be great to see that one out on GitHub there. I know some may be interested in localization in general, so
Yes.
that might be something that, I don't know if you have something easy to share with that, and how you configure and set up to use localization within 260. That would be really helpful.
Well, one of the things I learned is that you don't actually have to do anything at all to enable localization. The hard part is to enable localization in DNN when you have a very developed website. That's really complicated. I know there are a couple settings, some hidden settings that are not so easy to understand, because you can have it enabled, then you need to allow content localization, then you have to go to each page and enable localization in each one of them, translate everything in site title, description, And then you have to work your magic inside it. Oh, okay. Can't do that since the model is not from here. I believe. So this is all you have to do inside 2Sexy to enable localization. This is the only option you will have to enable. If the page is already translated, if the translation is approved, which is another setting inside the page, here you have to translate, you have to publish, you have to update, and then it will have the option to change the language inside the page. If you go to a page and these buttons do not show, you're missing either the authorization or the translation. If you try to create any sort of data inside, you automatically will have these options to localize your content. This is my first language, the primary, and then you'll have to translate. You just have to click the buttons. This is the version 15, I think, option. To auto-translate is in Google. You can choose not to translate, or to link to any other options, which could be any other language. You just copy whatever is changed there. But if you want to translate this field, just click translate and you can change whatever you want. It's really as easy as that.
Just one quick thing, when you click on enable localization, there's an option that says localize all pages. And it at least tries to go through all the pages. Sometimes I find that it stumbles partway through and I have to do it 2 or 3 times to get it through all. It's not perfect.
That's what happened to me. It failed somewhere along the way, and then it did not allow me to continue the process.
Yeah, I found that I'd have to sort of go out, do it again. Eventually it would cooperate. It's pretty good, but not quite perfect.
When you start a new website, it's a blank stage. It's easy. You can go one by one, translate the ones you want, do not translate the ones you do not want. And then from then on, it's very easy to continue. But when you already have like 100 pages in your DNN website, it can be quite messy to achieve translating, especially because different models and different pages can behave in a weird way. I don't know if anyone reached this part here, because you have these icons, which are mostly invisible in some screens, but they can be blue and transparent. And there's not a single tip to what this thing does. And it seems to be exactly the opposite of what it should be. Linked, it seems to create a new version of the model, and Unlinked seems to use the same module on the different pages. So if the module does not support translation, it will show in the original page. But for 2Sexy apps, you can leave it like this, basically not linked, and 2Sexy will handle the translation. So when you have to do this for all
linked,
pages,
but
with
showing
all
an
different
unlinked
models,
icon.
yeah,
it's very confusing.
I'm sensing a little bit of empathy coming from certain people in the audience.
Yeah.
I know I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what this do. Sometimes if you have deleted modules, they will still show here. If they are still in recycle bin, they will show in this list, and it will be very, very confusing. So translating a very developed website is not something for the faint of heart, because it can be messy. And I did, in one of the attempts, I actually had to restore the website to a previous version because I did not understand where so many errors were coming from. And it was very, very, very messy. For 2Sexy, you only have to translate either the app itself or the data. For the data, you just have to click the second language and translate wherever you want. For the code, it's actually a bit trickier because you have to write this thing here. This means it will get a text from the resources with this field name. And you can configure it here, app resources, and you set whatever fields you want.
Oh.
For example, that eval data is getting the text from here. This UED has many options as you want, no limit. And then you translate it is in the other menu. This is the field name, the Portuguese value, and the English value. So it will get the culture whatever you're using. I'm using this, but it can be a domain or wherever you want, and it will pick the culture from the DNN page and load the resources with the corresponding language. And this is an automated process. You don't actually have to do anything at all. If it's data from the tables within the app, you automatically have the options to translate anything you want, automatically, manually link to another language, do whatever you want. And if it is the code, whenever you want the text to show in the code, you just will use this the same way you use to get app settings. You use app resources, just put the field name in front. And then after you have the fields created, you can also use this menu, which will directly go to the app text. So it's actually very, very easy because TwoSexy will do everything you need for you. It's automatic process.
This is the first time I've actually seen that implemented. So that was really cool to see how that, because I never connected the dots, that works just like settings.
Same here.
Yes.
Thank you.
So this is another app I've been developing, which helps users to decide what treatment to implement based on data evaluated from a WAND. So it basically creates a form the same way many apps already do. It's like Mobius forms and other things. You create an entity type with the data, and then the code loops and creates the forms accordingly. But basically, this is running like 3 to 4 engines in order to perform some analysis. For example, when a user selects this, I have a rule created that will tell them do something else. And it will guide the user towards a process. I'm going to show just the endpoint of it. And based on the data that the user evaluated, it will recommend performing some sort of interventions or using some products in the WAND. This is also complete or 99% translated the list. It's many, many fields, many, many texts. So it takes a while to translate everything. But I'm going to show exactly how this is done. Let me just open the network. As soon as the user clicks interventions, it will send, why Firefox automatically minimizes this, but not easy. It will collect the data from the form and send it to the API, which will respond by checking rules. And each of the rules will be evaluated as true or false. And if the rule is true, it will recommend some of the options that you see here. Why this is a bit different than many other apps you probably already seen, because this is not done with code. So this is done in a way that any user with no let's say coding experience whatsoever can create rules, because he just comes here and he can say that based on one condition or whatever, he can advise or restrict this, then choose this intervention and use this resource, for example, or this. What I've done is the engine, the API code that picks this and creates the rules to perform this sort of recommendations. So I created an app that users can continue developing without any sort of developing knowledge. and they can do it all by themselves with no without paying every single option, every single update that there is. And this is another very, very, very user-specific application that fills their needs. And I hope this will be public very soon, because it's very, very helpful. You can see that there are some options being shown based on what's been selected on a previous option. And this is another engine that is being updated. This is front end, it's JavaScript running here.
You may have mentioned this, but is this leveraging Mobius forms?
Sorry, what do you mean by leveraging?
Using Mobius forms?
No.
Okay.
This is again, very simple code. My knowledge of developing code is very, very restricted. I just Google whatever I need and try to implement it. But it just gets the data, very simple. It loads some functions that enable, for example, constructing the values to go to the API, some helpers to create the form, and this is basically built ground up. No other app was used as inspiration, so to say. This is being developed for almost a year, so it's a simple code, but it's quite long yet. You can see it has very rudimentary, let's say, ways to check for validation codes. You can see that if a user select is different, it's less than, more than, less or equal, contains an F, one value contains all values, contains only this value. This is the engine that picks the values and compare it to what it's specified in the rule I create in the user interface. You can see very, very, very simple code. And the API also very simple option is just returning what options are shown here. This is mostly debug information since it's still a developing app, but it basically checks. Let's say this rule is checking for a diagnosis with this text, and it checks if this returns true or returns false based on what the user selects here. If he selected the matching value, venous ulcer in this case, it will return true. If he selects anything else, it will return false, so it will not show the options that this rule implemented. And this is again one of the options for my use case, used so that users can develop their conditions, their rules, whatever they want, whatever they need. If they can just click here, and let's say if the diagnosis is this, and the rule is created. He did not have to write a single line of code to create this. The user interface will do this for him. And it's as simple as that. It simplifies the role for the users so they can keep working as fast as possible and without learning to code, at least as I did to develop this. I don't know if anyone has any questions about the feature I showed till now. If not, I don't think I have anything more of interesting, at least, to show.
I don't have any question about this particular thing, although it's incredibly impressive and sort of brings up some ideas for my own use. But how did you decide on 2sexy and DNN? Did you have a background in it, or did you sort of review other options?
No, actually, DNN was my first experience with Windows servers and ASP.NET and C#. But I started like 20 years ago with PHP, and I honestly hated it. Then I learned some SQL for research projects and data querying. And then I created a local server with Windows, obviously. We don't usually use Linux at home. and I started learning C# and whatever. And then DNN, I believe I Googled for most used Windows content managers. And I believe the first at the time was like Umbraco, I believe. I tried it, did not like it. And then I believe one of the other options was DNN. It was rather simple to install, and I believe the Facebook group was also very helpful at the time, and I loved it. So been using it for like, I don't know, 6 years or 10 years or something like that. And I still use it, so I really like it. Too Sexy was my third or fourth options. My first options was the old Foreman list module. I don't know if it's still being updated. I doubt it, but
Still
it worked
works.
quite well for a while.
It is still working. It's still error free and doesn't appear to be dying. It's not great, but it's there.
No, it did its job pretty well. It creates forms, it saves data, it allows you to analyze the data. The querying for the data was not so great at the time, but then I heard about Too Sexy, tried it, and learned you can develop apps. Since developing modules is not so easy. At least you need to use Visual Studio Code and stuff like that. I don't usually do that, but I have DNN. Too Sexy allows you to develop code within the CMS itself. So you can just click the edit code and do it within live sites, which is actually what I do. Create 2 versions, one live, one testing, and then replace them as we go. We don't have the luxury of developing servers right home, since it's a hobby and nothing else, but developing apps within the code itself, within the app, within Too Sexy, whenever we are, it's a great asset, at least to me it has been. And I'm loving it, so I hope it keeps up this way.
Oh, wow. I have to say that after seeing all this, I don't think you should claim that you are not a programmer.
Yeah, I was kind of giggling. You were saying, yeah, I'm not a developer, I'm just a nurse, but it's like, no.
You are a programmer and a developer. You are.
I never had a single hour of at least a class learning for coding. So it's basically just Googling, searching how things are done, and then adapting the code.
That's what we all do.
I must say, though, I mean, there's a difference between just searching and using what you find and actually searching and knowing enough to how to use it in a more proper way, and just looking at what you've done there. It looks like you're the latter part of that, not the hack developer. So
when I release the code for, let's say the cookie app, you will look at it and you will raise your hands and say, "Oh my God, how is it possible?"
Well, that's where open source would come in very well. Other people can contribute and maybe help improve it. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for presenting, because I know I'm going to go back and watch this again several times, because some of the areas I'm like, oh, wait, hold on, I want to see that. But I think this is going to be a good one. So thank you for for doing this. I think it's
You're welcome.
One of the best.
I usually see and listen these meetings, but it's 9 p.m. here, so my child today went for a walk, but usually it's trying to sleep right now, so it's impossible for me to participate in every meeting.
Understood. Well, thank you so much. It was really good. And thanks everybody for joining. We'll be here next month. Again, we're going to try our best to actually compile the Too Sexy core and the various pieces of that, what that means. So we'll see how we go with that. That'll be a fun exercise, but come and join us and see what pieces you can pick up and help with that, because that'll be fun.
Sure.
If nothing else, we'll learn a little bit more about the inner workings of Too Sexy and how it's all pieced together. All right. Well, have a great morning, afternoon, evening, night, whatever it is for you. And thanks a lot, everybody. See you next month.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
See ya.